Welcome to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast. I am your host, Kaylee Greenacre, a business strategist, coach, TEDx speaker, author, and your go-to woman for all things business strategy. I am obsessed with supporting female entrepreneurs to grow unstoppable six and multi-six-figure businesses that they love, giving them the freedom and life that they desire. During this podcast, I'll be sharing with you everything that you need to become a successful female entrepreneur, from the mindset shifts to sales and marketing strategies, and how to become an iconic leader that people can't get enough of. It is my mission to help you stand out, attract your dream clients and customers, and sell out of your offers with ease whilst building the business and life of your dreams. Let's make this your reality, ladies. Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Actually I Can, the Female Entrepreneur Podcast. And I'm joined today by the fabulous Taylor Smith, who is a profit and cashflow strategist for female founders. And in this episode, we are going to be diving into profit over revenue, the truth about wealth, cash flow, and sustainable business growth. Taylor, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here on the podcast. And I'm going to say finally, because I feel like we should have done this forever ago. Welcome, darling.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so glad I'm here and it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you for having me.
And I'm excited to dive into our topic. I feel like this is something that all female entrepreneurs need to hear. In fact, all entrepreneurs need to hear at some point, especially when it comes to making their business highly profitable and supporting them with that sustainable business growth, which, as we know, everyone wants, and they want to see that continuously throughout the years and the future years of their business. So I'm really, really excited to dive into this topic, but let's start off by sharing with our audience a little bit about you, your story, and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off growing up in a single parent household. My mum is a superstar. Like, she raised three children and did everything she could to the best of her ability. And I will always love and respect her for that. But I did discover very quickly that, we were poor. And money is hard to come by. So I have to go out and work to contribute towards the family household. So unfortunately, university wasn't an option for me. I needed to get a job quickly. So after I actually remember having a conversation with one of my mum's friends who she was in gaming at the time and she worked in the office there. And I said to her, what's a job that I can do that I can, make loads of money and won't have to work for someone for the rest of my life? And she looked at me and was like, you could be an accountant. And I was like, perfect, I'm going to be an accountant.
Yeah.
That is how deeply and how much time I took to really think about my career path and what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But that is literally how I decided, because I didn't know, so that's what I did. I went to college, got my A levels, and I went straight into the world of work.
Mm-hmm.
I was a young, inexperienced female Black girl trying to go into accountancy, which was a story for another time. It was a very interesting journey. However, I did come across someone in corporate, because I went straight into corporate as opposed to practice. I didn't go into an accounting practice. I went into industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across a manager who was willing to take a punt on me. And I said to him, I was like, just give me a chance. I know I have no experience, but you will have no one that will work harder than me. I will graft. And that is exactly what I did. He gave me that chance. And that was the start of my grafting corporate career.
Wow.
Yeah, it was intense, but it was incredible. And I raised through the ranks, at a reasonable pace. I studied and qualified as an ACCA chartered accountant.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up in aviation. And I was there for many years and I had the most incredible career. I got to experience things that some people never get to experience in their lives. When you're in that kind of industry, it's very high rolling, incredible. And the stuff that I learned, the board meetings I was in, I ended up being finance director of a number of their companies. Grew one of their companies to over 400 million in sales. We owned a aircraft private airline that I was the finance director of, an aircraft maintenance company I was the finance director of. It was incredible. I had such a wonderful career, was learning so much and growing these businesses. But I got to the point where I wanted a family.
Mm,
And I knew that I wouldn't do the role justice, I wouldn't do motherhood any justice if I stayed in that position. It was impossible. So I can remember thinking, oh my goodness, like what can I do? What can I do that allows me to really embrace motherhood, but still be able to earn an income? And I thought, oh, I know, I'm going to start my own accountancy firm. That's what I'm going to do. So I did that, and it still actually runs to this day, but I don't have a huge amount involved in it, and it's kept very small on purpose for a select few clients. But the conversations that I was having with founders and, these incredible business owners
mm,
was how much tax do I have to pay and when do I have to pay it by? Which is all useful information, but it's not stuff that I want to talk about. It doesn't light me up. That's not what I was doing in my corporate career in aviation. Like, I want to know you want to grow this business. I want to know you've got a vision. I can bring you the financial information, the decisions that need to be made to help grow this business. That's what lights me up. So I really, cliche, ended up stumbling across a real happy, clappy webinar, which is not my thing usually at all. But I stayed, for whatever reason, I stayed watching this webinar thinking, oh my God, why am I watching this? But he shared some things on that webinar that really were light bulb moments for me. And I thought, oh my God, I know what I need to do. I need to bring all of my experience, all of my expertise, everything that I've learned in corporate finance. I'm going to bring that to the entrepreneurial space. You know, Entrepreneurs, they have accountants. Yes, they have bookkeepers. That's not what I do. I'm not here to submit your tax return. Yes, I can help lower your tax, whatever, but I'm here to help you grow your business from the financial point of view. And when I think back to all of these board meetings that I'm sitting in, there is the CEO, there is the director of marketing, there's the director of sales, and there's the finance director.
mm.
Always. Not one decision is made without understanding the financial implications first. And I want to bring that knowledge and understanding to female founders so that I can help them grow their businesses quicker, more profitably, so they can carry on creating these incredible businesses that they make. So that's how I've got to where I am today.
What a story as well, and love the background. You've obviously got years of experience, and you're obviously bringing now your passion. Well, you have done in the last few years or so, and you're bringing it even more so to the forefront. Your passion to support female founders and help them. And I love what you said there. Again, it's about understanding the financial side of everything of your business. It's not just understanding how much tax you have to pay and what date you have to pay it. And I think that's something that I think is the whole financial part of business, I think is massively underrated when it comes to starting a business. People start a business because they're passionate about something, and that's amazing. But
Mhm.
actually, do they understand what goes alongside that? So, setting up a business and being able to understand your numbers. And that was a big lesson for myself. With my first business when I was 25, I had no clue what I was doing as an entrepreneur. I was an assistant head, well, I was a teacher at the time. But I started my first business as a photography and videographer as such. I had no clue what I had to do and how needed to do it. And I was, full-time employed as well at the same time. So it's fascinating. It really, really is. And it's something that I learned very early on. And I'm glad that I did, because
Mm.
if I hadn't, I probably would have thrown a lot of money away without even realizing it. And I think that's the key thing. So let's dive into this, because it's such an interesting topic, and I know that you're going to give so much value to our listeners. And I think one of the first things I want to start by asking you is all about this whole concept of revenue and profit. Because let's be honest, we see numbers thrown out there all of the time online, 10K months and 100K launches and all of these things. They're brilliant. Don't get me wrong, fantastic, amazing figures. But so many people focus on the revenue, don't they? And they
Mhm.
don't really focus on the profit. So, can you enlighten us a little bit as listeners? Why is the profit number the most important? And what does this all mean in terms of revenue and profit? Let's kind of break it down a little bit.
Yeah, so your revenue is, what you're getting from your clients. That's that top number. You sell a service or a product, and that's the amount that you make as a result of that service. But your profit is what's left over after all of your costs have come out as a result of providing that service, running your business. And the reason why that number is so important is because it is what can either help you grow your business
Mhm.
or, in some sad cases, be not enough or making a loss, which means that actually what you're spending is outweighing what you're getting in from clients, which can lead to all sorts of things. You could end up going into debt, struggles, stress. It makes life so much harder. So that's the why profit is so, so important. Having a handle on how much profit you're making and how to increase that number.
Mm.
Because you can increase your sales, but if your profit stays the same, but actually you've got a ton more work to do, or your energy is depleted even more because you're serving more clients, but actually it's not really giving you much more profit. That's something that really needs to be looked at. And how there's only a certain amount of time a business can run and still continue to run if you're not making enough profit or if you're making a loss. It's literally there is a countdown running as a result.
Mm. And I think it's interesting you say that as well because I know and you know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are hitting really high revenue months. Like I said, like let's throw it out there, the 10K, the 50K, the 100K months, whatever it looks like. And it is fantastic. Of course it is to be bringing that revenue into your business, depending on the business size and the business model. But I also know that so many of those people feel like they're not actually making enough money because their costs are so high, because they're maybe paying a team 75% of that, and then they've got to pay themselves plus all the other, expenses. Can we talk a little bit about that? Why do we think this happens? How are we as entrepreneurs, and I don't mean we as all of us, but why do we lose control of that, in terms of the finances and the revenue versus the profit?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's something that I found really common, and I don't know if it's just with women, but I only work with women, so I can only talk from my experience. But there is a real resistance around understanding the numbers and how they work. And that, it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't even open a bank account. So I can understand that there is so many other factors. But in addition to maybe it's just boring, maybe there's fear, trauma around numbers. There's so many factors that could be playing into this. But there is a real resistance around understanding the numbers in business.
Mm.
And quite often, the women that I work with, they have such a vision and they are so creative that almost like trying to drum up the energy to now understand the numbers as well is just like, oh, like no. Sometimes they just don't have the energy for it. So I think there's that at play here. But when it comes to, you see these big, I made this much in a month, which, like you said, is incredible. And I love that. But there is a reason why you won't see people saying, and this much was profit.
Yeah.
There is a reason why you see that. And and I get it. I completely get it. I understand. Look, you created a whole business. No one expects you to be a finance expert. But I feel like as entrepreneurs, we give ourselves such a hard time, You're wearing already so many hats. To then add on a finance expert on top of that,
Of
it's a
course.
lot. It is a lot. But as a result of shying away from the numbers or not getting support in from someone who deals with the numbers, it then means that as these businesses grow, so much effort is spent on marketing and sales and getting new clients, which means that the business does get bigger and it does get busier.
Mm.
But there's not enough time and attention being paid to the profit, to the cash flow, to all of those things, the financial structure within the business. Not enough is input into that. And that's how these businesses can, I speak to very successful women who are generating crazy, incredible amounts of money, millions sometimes,
Yeah.
and still, I had a conversation with a woman a couple of weeks ago, incredible, millions, but she still didn't feel comfortable she didn't feel like she was ready for someone like me to come in and look at her numbers.
Interesting.
It really is, and I believe there's so many factors coming into that, about, identity and the confidence around numbers. Sometimes that vulnerable feeling as well,
Yeah.
which I completely understand. So the reason why I'm trying to shout about this so much more now is because I want these incredible women to understand that there is a safe place you can come. There are people, whether it be me or someone else, there are people that can really be your safe place for this part of your business. No one expects you to know all of this as well. And there are people that can support you in this area. Safe, judge free, and let's just get it sorted so you can carry on with the vision and the incredible impact that you're making. So I think sometimes these incredible women can create these businesses, can focus so much on sales and new clients, but when the infrastructure or the finances don't get installed as well as this growth happening, it can just snowball. And then what I find is as well, which I've seen, is they get to a position where they're so successful, they almost hold back from asking for help because they feel like, well, I should know this.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
should know this. I had all this money, I created. I should know this. But I want people to know that no, you don't need to have. There's no should know this. You're not a finance expert. No one expects you to be a finance expert, and please know that that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to really get across at the moment.
And I think it's a really important message, isn't it? Because I think you're absolutely right. As an entrepreneur, and it can be of any industry, as an entrepreneur, we are not expected to know everything. We're
Hmm.
really not. We're experts in our fields. For me, it's marketing and sales. For someone else, it might be fitness, it might be nutrition, it might be something else. And therefore, when you become a CEO of your own business, there's multiple hats that we are all wearing. And so therefore, it's really important to get the support, to get the help that will guide you. And I think it's really important to have a good understanding of numbers and cash flow and things, but actually having the support from someone that can help you with that. Equally so, because like you said, we can't do everything ourselves. It's impossible, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's understanding those few key numbers, which is what
Yes.
I'm a very simple person. I like simplicity and I
Yes.
like to bring those to my clients. You don't need to know the this and that and this formula. You don't need this massive Excel sheet. You just need to understand these key numbers. These are the drivers. This is what we're focused on and how to grow that. So I completely agree with what you're saying. Like you just need to have an understanding of what's driving your business and the impacts it has so that you can make these decisions. You can decide to take up this opportunity that's sprung upon you, which you weren't expecting. Once you understand and have that clarity and that confidence around what impact that will have financially and where you're at now, can you afford to or can't you? Once you have that confidence, you can then make those bold decisions and go at it full throttle and with passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Really having a good understanding of those, like you said, keeping it simple, and really understanding what you need to know. And then obviously, experts such as yourself to be able to help with the more complex structures and strategies to kind of help implement, support the growth.
Hmm.
Which leads me on to my next question of cash flow, because I've always found this fascinating. We've mentioned revenue, we've mentioned profit, and obviously we understand and know that profit is absolute key, but cash flow is a huge factor of all of this. And why does a healthy cash flow, why is that so important? Why is that so important for an entrepreneur to have a really good understanding of cash flow and actually creating a healthy cash flow in their business every single month?
Cash is so important. You could be running a business at a loss and still have cash in the bank
Yeah.
if you manage it smartly.
Hmm.
Not saying that that's the ideal, but that's the power of cash flow.
Hmm.
Having control over your cash flow and structuring your cash ins and outs in a way that most benefits you and your business is so important. Profit, profit is important, especially long term,
Hmm.
but cash is what will allow you to make the decisions on your day-to-day basis. The decisions that you're making, whether to sell, not to sell, whether to create a sale for your offer or not to have a sale, whether to invest in an opportunity that's arisen or not to invest. that is heavily dependent on the cash flow in your business. And when we're looking at cash flow, when you're thinking about the impact that your decisions will make on your cash flow, we're talking about things like what payment terms are you giving to your clients?
Mhm.
Some businesses I've seen give very, very, very lenient payment plans,
Yeah.
which I understand where it's coming from. You know, we all come from a place where we want to help and support people. But you have to take that into account when you're looking at your business. Yes, you may have just sold a 10 grand package, but in cash terms, what are you actually getting in each month?
Yeah.
And then you need to look at, okay, so if you're giving all of this benefit to your clients, are you asking for the same from your suppliers? What arrangements do you have in place? These are all different things that you can be looking at. If you're trying to improve your cash flow position, start there first. You know, the payment terms you're giving to your clients. Can you get payment terms from your suppliers? If you haven't even asked, ask. You
Yeah.
know, we're all businesses here. Why not? You know? So I think cash is the lifeblood of your business. And if you have no visibility on your cash flow, if literally your visibility is opening up your bank account and you're looking at your statement and you're looking at the balance in your bank account, then I would invite you to please take a pause and take some time to really think about how you can get more information to support the decisions that you're making. Because, and I've seen it, people making decisions based on the bank balance of that day is that's the quickest way to get yourself into financial cash, whether it be a week down the line or a month down the line, but get into financial trouble.
Mhm.
So having that visibility and the forward focus, you know, forecasting forwards at what is your bank balance going to look like next month, in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, what does that look like? It can really transform the way that you make decisions and it can transform the way that you view the finances. Because instead of shying away and being nervous and kind of half looking at it, half not, half hoping that that client's going to pay, but you're not really quite sure, all of that anxiety that comes with that, once you get that clarity and that visibility, oh, just that alone can make such a difference for your business.
It does. It really does. Like you said, having that clarity, that understanding. It's one of the biggest things that I learned as well, actually. This is a good few years ago when I started. Well, I've always offered payment plans, but I started to introduce Unstoppable, which is my signature program, and offering plans. And obviously, again, I at the time was buzzing because, you know, I got 11 people in on the first month that I launched it. And it was amazing in terms of revenue on payment plans. And then when you look at the cash flow, and, you know, it's a lot less. And it was really interesting that then putting together again, when you're looking at sort of forecasting and seeing how this is going to build over time, you can see that recurring revenue. And that made me feel a little bit better, but also more stable in terms of understanding the figures and the numbers and the projections.
Mhm.
So I think it's also really important to understand, to know what's coming in, when it's coming in, and obviously, like you said, that point of payment plans, how is that going to impact and affect your business, you know, in the next couple of months? And is it going to, you know, affect it in a way where you can't afford to pay your VAT bill, or, you know, your normal tax bill, you know, your whatever it is, specifically depending on the type of business that it is.
Mm.
So is there, it'd be really interesting to know from you, is there sort of certain things that you see female entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general kind of leaking money or missing opportunities to increase their cash flow, I suppose, or their profit? Is there certain things that you see that actually it might help our listeners to just kind of check in and see potentially if they're doing the same?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the biggest thing and the most common thing that I've seen is actually like their pricing.
Mm.
So the quite often underpricing, but also the structure in their pricing. Having what I've found with a lot of really successful business owners is they quite often have like a tiered structure that has different price points that makes the most of the amount of leads that come into their space.
Hmm.
instead of someone coming in as a lead and going, oh, that's too expensive. I can't afford it, and disappearing, or coming in and say, oh, that's way too cheap. That's not the kind of level I'm looking at, and turning away again. They're having different levels of support at different price points. So pricing is something that I would say is a really quick and easy, arguably, thing to look at if you're looking at your profitability.
Mm.
That is definitely something I would look at. Another thing that I would say is underrated, actually, when it comes to profit, is looking at spending. And it's something that until you actually really review your spending and really critically say, do I need it? Don't I need it? Actually, you can sometimes save thousands in just willy-nilly spending. You sign up for something because you're doing a project and it's not enough money to make you cringe every month, but so it just goes on and on and on. There's several of those things going through. Do you really use that program anymore? No, you don't. Could you actually consolidate into this software? Yes, you probably could. Spending is definitely something that I think is underrated. And actually, if everyone did it a little bit more, you'd probably, that alone you could do that today and probably save at least, if not a couple of hundred, a couple of grand, sometimes I've seen in some businesses. That's another thing that I would say definitely look at. Um, so that's profit. Those are the two quickest things I would say. Cash flow again, the payment terms is something that's quite quick that you
Yeah.
can look at and understand what kind of payment terms are you giving. Could you ask for a deposit up front and then use payment plans? That's something that I've helped clients introduce, which has actually had quite a significant positive impact on their business in terms of cash flow. So these are the sorts of things that you can be looking at, absolutely. But what I've found is the biggest transformation that I
Mm.
see is actually when you're actually paying attention to the numbers in the first place. So the biggest leap is usually someone who's not really been paying too much attention. They have an accountant, they send their stuff to the accountant, fine, but they've not really been paying attention to the numbers and what's driving the numbers and the offers. So another thing that I've seen is how much profit you're making per offer that you're offering or
Mhm.
per service.
Yes.
That's another thing that I would say is really helpful because once they understand that, yes, okay, this is the service you like to offer most. This is the one you like to deliver and gives you the most energy and that you love the most, and it's so vibrant and incredible. But which one is actually making you the most money?
Mm.
Sometimes that level of discussion, and when you see that in black and white, that can really transform a business, and the energy spent for each service often quite changes when once that's kind of been uncovered. So those are a few things that you can look at if you're looking at profitability, if you're looking at your cash, definitely look at those things first and
Yeah.
see the difference you can have in your business. If you start focusing your energy on the most profitable service you offer rather than the one that you just maybe enjoy the most, see what happens to your numbers, definitely.
That's some great piece of advice there, and definitely having a little look at your spending and sort of looking at your payment terms. So many good pieces of advice there for our listeners. I'm sure there'll be many people listening to this going, ah, yeah, that's a good idea.
I
Haven't
hope
thought of
so.
that one. But no, great. Thank you so much for your advice. And I'm sure there's potentially some listeners that might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. We're throwing words around here: revenue, profit, cash flow, all of these things, and sometimes it can create that little bit of overwhelm.
Mhm.
So, is there any advice that you would give our listeners as to where they can realistically start with this without feeling overwhelmed?
Okay. I would start with if you're doing the numbers yourself
Hmm.
and you maybe don't have, if you have an accountant, ask your accountant for a monthly profit report. Like you want to understand how much profit you're making every month. Just start with that one thing, that one number. You probably already know your sales, how much you're hitting in sales,
Yeah.
but start monitoring that monthly because once you start there, you'll probably end up getting more curious. And when you start seeing the fluctuations month on month, then you might be ready to start investigating a little bit more. Start there. If you're doing the numbers yourself, in your bookkeeping software, you will have a report that's called a profit and loss report, and that will give you how much profit you're making every month. Start there. Just start with that number and start tracking that number in with your sales and profit. How much money are you making each month? And then the cash flow, we can come to that, but I would say start there.
Yeah, it's a really good piece of advice. Profit and loss is one of the most important things, right? 100%. So
Definitely.
definitely, and I'm sure most people listening will either have, accountants as such, or
Mhm.
potentially someone that can help them with that.
Mhm.
So absolutely listen to Taylor's advice there. And then if we look at maybe someone who's listening to the podcast and they're established business and they're wanting to really scale, but also build real wealth, right? Because they don't just want a busy business. They don't just want a business that's, yeah, okay, the cash flow is good, but they're not really making huge profit. They really want to build some wealth for generate, their future generations, etc., for the family. What would you say is the one shift that they need to make? Or is there something specific? I know it will differ for every individual, but is there something specific that they should really focus on to kind of future proof their business, but also to give them that opportunity to really scale and grow that wealth?
Yeah, systemize. They have to concentrate on the systemization of everything in their business, finances included. There
Mm,
should be a system in place where they can come and look, whether it's them, whether it's a junior, someone should be able to come in to a system and see the financial performance of the business clearly. No investigation, no digging under this, that, what happened there, that exception. Systems. That will be what scales the business. And what I see is, you have people that have content systems, so their marketing's going out on all their social platforms because they've got a content system. They've got a sales system, they've got a structure in place for every sales call, discovery, they've got funnels. Finance system, there has to be a system in place. You should not be, or your accountant should not be scrambling for receipts or information at the end of the month or the end of the tax year to collate all of the information to then be able to say, oh, this is the end figure. There
mhm.
should be financial systems in place in your business. As soon as you have that nailed, that is what helps you then to scale, to build that wealth. You then can start looking at, okay, so how am I going to be withdrawing as a founder, withdrawing, wealth so that I can put it aside and look for future and all the things. But systems, definitely.
Amazing systems. That is
Yes. And
absolutely
that's
key for anyone scaling and wanting to build. And obviously, yes, absolutely. Once they really have the systems in place, they understand, they obviously start to build that profit. They can then look, can't they, at, reinvesting and looking at, pension schemes and all the different things, obviously, again, that will give them the opportunity to do X, Y, or Z with the profit that they're making.
exactly. And that's exactly what I do. I install these systems into successful businesses so that you can do that. And then we can look at the structure of the bit. Do we need to look at ABC shares so that, if you want your kids to get certain things, you look at all these different structures you can then put in place to then build that generational wealth. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Taylor, this has been incredible, and I know that we could speak about this for a much longer. But there's so many pieces of advice that you've given today, and some key takeaways for people that I'm sure there'll be something that they can say, right, I need to go and check on that, or I need to find my profit and loss, or at least try to, to figure this out or to really understand it. What would be your final piece of advice for our listeners today?
Get a handle on the numbers, key numbers, sales, profit, cash, and monitor them at least monthly.
Mm,
Start with that because once you start understanding the fluctuations, you can then start making better business decisions to grow your business.
fantastic. Incredible advice. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the podcast today. Where can our listeners find you and connect with you, please?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram the most, I would say. So my handle is Taylor Smith and Co, all written as one word.
Amazing. And all about Taylor. Her links, her bio, everything is in the show notes below. So go and check her out, go and connect with her. She is incredible at what she does. And I can absolutely say that if you haven't got someone supporting you with the finances of your business, she is the queen. She's the go-to person. So please make sure you go and connect with her. She will help you loads. Taylor, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so, so much for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to everyone that's tuned into today's episode. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and I'll see you all again next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Actually I Can Female Entrepreneur podcast with me, your host, Kaylee Greenacre. If you are ready to build, grow, and scale your dream six-figure or multi-six-figure business, then head to our website now for more information or connect with me on socials to see how you can create your dream business and dream life.